How does marketing work at Airwallex?
You're in a very dangerous territory if you're running a marketing team and you're seen as a cost item.
Can you explain why sponsoring F1 team is not a royal waste of money?
Is this a PG podcast? Cheesy puns around speed or efficiency.
Yeah. I researched how marketing at Airwallex works.
Done, wrote the check, logo's there, time to go home. That's a mistake that many startups or many kind of even scale-ups make, is that you pump all this money when you get funded into...
Jon Stona, Vice President of Global Marketing at Airwallex, said, "How is this not a word salad?"
Everyone likes different types of health food. Some people like figure it out.
There's often a lot of tension when people start commenting on each other's work.
I think I'm now on your podcast, so I've like peaked in my career. It will after this day, it just goes down. This is the most important thing I'm going to say for our entire time as being best friends.
Operating principles, 6 things stating who you are, and 6 things how we work together. It's not like you shoehorned anything to make it equal.
Every time you smile, I get terrified. I think like, what's he gonna say? What's he gonna find?
So we can sell you a very fat Ahrefs account.
Ahrefs Podcast.
Airwallex is valued at 5.6 billion, received almost 1 billion in total funding. And recently you guys crossed 100 billion processing volume. So can I use the word astronomical to describe your marketing budget?
You cannot use the word astronomical to describe the marketing budget. So I think we kind of have to look at budgeting in relative terms, right? I mean, Airwallex is still, despite all the fast growth that we've seen, fantastic product for, I believe you've used it before, but if you haven't kind of gone, okay, well in that case, that should be the end goal of today's conversation to help convince you. But despite the fast growth, a lot of it's come on the back of having a really fantastic product. And so from a marketing standpoint, I'd say it's only been in the past 2 to 4 years or so that we really started trying to accelerate and trying to kind of get the team built, especially over the past probably 18 months or so. So, if you think, Tim, about our major competitors who we kind of play against in the space, it's a lot of these legacy banks, right? And so we're going up against folks that have been around for, in some cases, 100+ years, that have had 100 years to build up marketing teams and invest in building brand. And so we're playing a bunch of catch up, but we're still, scale up stage company.
Wait, but if we take some of your kind of digital competitors, not the conventional banks, but again, I'm not very familiar with the space, so you'll be educating me as we go. But products like Revolut, Wise. Recently, I was here in Singapore at some expo, and there was a company called Wallex, which is very similar to Airwallex. And I believe some of these companies are public already. So they're publishing their expenses and there's a line for marketing spend. So would you say that your marketing spend is comparable or like a lot lower than theirs?
I'd say we're still playing catch up because also when you think about the Wises of the world, the Revoluts of the world, they also have a big consumer component, right? And so oftentimes they can pump in, tens of millions of dollars to essentially get consumers on the platform en masse, and then also kind of efficiently upsell some of those into the business offering. Airwallex at the moment, primarily B2B.
Speaking of the not astronomical marketing budget, you sponsored F1 team. There's a news headline from your website, Airwallex and McLaren Racing, multi-year partnership to modernize global payment, blah, blah, blah. So, I started getting into Formula One a little bit. It's clearly that every car is plastered by logos. When you watch the actual race, there's logos everywhere. But can you explain why sponsoring F1 team is not a royal waste of money?
Sure. Well, the fact that we have actually ramped up marketing and the fact that you even realized and are asking this question hopefully suggests we've gotten some cut through. But I think, if you take a step back and think about what we're trying to achieve for the brand, right? And going back to my comments earlier around who are we kind of playing against in the space, a big kind of component of whether or not you will even choose to use Airwallex is that trust, it's that credibility, right? You're in the financial services space. people tend to make, decisions based on a few different types of value. This is a kind of theory of marketing, right? Economic value. So let's take a car sharing service. You can say, well, you can market to say, I will save you this much instead of owning a car. That's kind of economic value you pitch on. Functional value, faster, cheaper, more efficient, save you time, etc. And then there's a psychological value. That's kind of why people oftentimes buy iPhones as opposed to, say, another brand. Not necessarily that an iPhone is better, but there's some type of psychological component to that. Now, when you think about building trust and why people choose, say, one financial services company vis-a-vis the next, you need that reliability, that credibility, that sense of security. Because if you're a small business, or even if you're just a consumer, right, and you're so used to doing status quo banking, legacy banking for decades, your parents were kind of banking at this bank, and then you were banking at this bank, and then you got a loan from this bank, right? There's a lot of inertia and a lot of kind of built up trust. And so for us as a private company coming on board saying we're going to challenge the status quo, great that we're faster, great that we're more cost effective, but we have to get that trust aspect. And so we looked at what are some efficient ways to actually build the brand, build the awareness, build the trust. And we said, well, we could do billboards, but billboards are fairly static in nature. Whereas when you look at, say, sports sponsorships, that's fairly dynamic because you get so many aspects. You get hospitality, you get IP, you get content, right? You get the actual, again, logo placement. And, yes, you're surrounded by other logos, but each race for F1 is globally broadcast, 70 odd million people tuning in around the world. And we were very deliberate about the type of logo placement that we got. We got a spot on the halo because, when we were negotiating the deal, we knew that, particularly with the TV coverage, no one's going to see the logo if it just goes around and around and around if you're one of the, not say the marquee sponsor. But the shot that people actually do have a chance of seeing you is that halo shot because there are only 5 to 7 logos. And so getting that repeatable, presence, again, every of these 24 races, we said that piece makes sense. But again, it wasn't just a logo. When you do these deals, you can't just spend money on a logo. You have to activate it. And that's the part which oftentimes marketers get wrong. They spend the money and they think, done, wrote the check, logo's there, time to go home. That's just a start. Now you actually have to do something with the partnership. And that's where, that's where the ideas, that's where the execution comes in.
How is this kind of presentation different from how you pitch this sponsorship, this partnership to your board or CEO or whatever? What other arguments did you use when talking like internally of why you should do this?
Yeah, I think we looked at, for one, we did a fairly comprehensive kind of analysis of the market. We looked at, it wasn't F1 off the bat, it wasn't McLaren off the bat. We looked at across the entire world of sports. Is it Premier League? Is it table tennis? Normal tennis? You name it, right? Mm-hmm. And we started thinking through, well, we like F1 because of the global nature. We being quite a global company, global is kind of in our ethos, in our DNA. We liked the fact that F1 was essentially this traveling roadshow of sorts. And it was also technologically forward and growing in momentum, especially in more frontier markets for us.
But if you were talking in bullet points, sure. So you're talking to CEO or board or whoever you needed to get approval for this thing from.
Yeah.
So one of the bullet points that I heard is we need to build trust.
Yes.
And this is effective way to do this.
Correct.
Because of all the kind of traits of Formula One and McLaren team that you have explained. It's technological, it's global, it's forward-looking, blah,
Correct.
blah. What are the other bullet points? So we need to build trust, therefore this partnership is good. What else? How did you...
Well, you need to build trust, you need to build familiarity, because another part of the deal was that we said whoever we work with, we would have to have product integration. Again, it wasn't just going to be you slap a logo on, right? McLaren, and we're proud to say this, is using Airwallex to actually power some of their financial operations. And so helping tell that story and helping tell how a heritage brand, which again is quite complex in the way they operate, and they, with cost caps in F1, they have to be very rigorous. The fact that they're trusting Airwallex, we can explain, the product and its different use cases through that as well. The third aspect is employees. We care a lot about obviously making sure our employees are happy and engaged. And when you actually do these types of sponsorships, it actually has a big boost in terms of employee engagement and pride and morale, because it shows that the company is investing in the brand. And it shows that, just the fact that you can, I remember for the Melbourne Grand Prix, get people into the races and get people, posting on social. It just is a good wave of energy. The last thing I'd say is just from a pure, more short-term kind of business result standpoint, the corporate hospitality piece is massive. Because when you actually have, say, access to athletes, when you have kind of access to, particularly great hospitality experiences, you get to start unlocking more and more conversations over that weekend. And so if you look at pipeline sourced, pipeline accelerated, I can tell you the deal's been essentially paying for itself.
Let's talk about this hospitality thing, because you invited me to an event that you guys did with F1. What's it, pilot or driver? How to? What's
driver, Lando Norris.
Driver.
Yes.
No, what's the correct term to use? Pilot or driver?
Driver.
Okay. F1 driver Lando Norris.
Yes.
Shifting Perspectives. The name of the event. Can you kind of break down this event as a marketing campaign or marketing initiative? Like what goes into it and what outcomes are you expecting of it?
Sure. I mean, I can answer this in two ways. I can give you a broader answer around kind of how this is constructed from a first principle standpoint, or I can give you a very kind of literal answer around how we're building things and how and what we expect.
Let's do literal first.
Let's do literal. Okay, fine. Comes back to my point earlier around just having a sponsorship is not good enough. You actually have to explain to the world why you're doing this and how you're doing it, right? It also comes back to the point where we're not going to kind of outcompete people based on dollars spent. So we have to outcompete folks based on creativity and execution. So all good marketing starts with good insight. And so the insight that we had for this campaign is we started looking at the types of companies that we serve. We started looking at Airwallex ourselves as a brand. And the main piece that we started realizing in terms of the commonality is that oftentimes, especially kind of fast growing companies and entrepreneurs, the way that they're able to be successful is that they take day-to-day frustrations, obstacles, and they're somehow able to actually shift their viewpoint and turn those obstacles into opportunities. That's very common of very successful entrepreneurs. And that's the Airwallex story as well. Airwallex, for, I think, you and I spoke about this before, started off actually as a coffee shop. And then that coffee shop has now, morphed after a series of pivots and frustrations into a financial company, right? But it was a whole insight around really successful, driven entrepreneurs, and the folks that we serve are successful because they're able to shift their perspective. And so we said, well, how do we take that shifting perspective, narrative, and mantra and fuse it with F1? Because McLaren also has been able over the years to actually shift their perspective and kind of push the boundaries, challenge the status quo. That's kind of what they're known for in the F1 space, being quite forward thinking. So that's the message that we want to land. Then comes the creative part, which is how do you explain it in a way that is kind of atypical, that cuts above the noise? And so that's where we started thinking, let's fuse the world of art. Because normally when you're doing these types of sponsorships, you get the same type of talking head type executions where it's, cheesy puns around speed or efficiency or, like...
I would do that totally.
Yeah, no one, that's not differentiated. Everyone forgets that. So the team said, well, what's a really great way we can take someone who is quite recognizable in Lando Norris. Lando's kind of competing for the number one spot in terms of the driver for the season. So lots of momentum behind him. And how do we do something special with him? And so we took Lando and then we said the world of art and is a kind of a different kind of cultural take. It lets us be more in kind of mainstream discourse. And so we found a great artist, Michael Murphy. Now Michael he specialized in 3D perceptual art. So he worked with like Barack Obama, Messi, Jordan, great campaigns with Nike and Adidas to take art that you look at it from one side and then you rotate around and it's something completely different. And so that to us was literally a shifting of perspective brought to life in a kind of savvy, kind of clever way.
I will interrupt you here because of two things. First of all, I didn't realize that you can look at this installation. I was at the event,
Yes.
so you invited me. Thank you. That was very cool seeing Lando Norris in real life. But I didn't realize that I could look at this thing from a different angle and see a logo until I saw some, like you shared maybe an article of some Singaporean news website, and I saw a picture of Lando Norris standing, and the thing looks like your logo. And I was like, so that's the thing, because I thought I only looked at it from
yes.
where it forms his face. But the reason I'm asking
Yes.
it is because what you were just now explaining, all of that went over my head.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I'm even your target audience. Probably not, because I'm a marketer, not like a chief financial officer or things like that. But also I noted a quote from the press release from this event, where it says, Jon Stona, Vice President of Global Marketing at Airwallex, said, "Success in business often comes down to how we choose to see challenges.
Yes.
By shifting perspectives, we can turn barriers into building blocks. Shifted perspectives illustrates how with a fresh approach, what once seemed like an obstacle can become an opportunity for growth." How is this not a word salad?
How's that a word salad?
Yeah. So sorry.
Everyone likes different types of health food. Some people like figure it out.
Yeah.
But
sorry. Like I'm just trolling a little bit. But
you can troll you want.
What I'm trying to say here is that there's this kind of philosophical narrative.
Yes.
Like now that you explained it to me, I can see. But on the actual event, for me, it was pretty hard to figure out. But anyway, that's not what I'm asking.
Yes.
I'm asking about philosophical aspect is different. We can talk later about branding and those kinds of things. But I want to talk about more simple things like you say, pipeline generated, like you invited people to this event. So some of these people are either existing or potential customers.
Yes.
Do you track that somehow in your CRM? Did we follow up with those customers? Because
of course.
Again, credit to you. I got an email from your people a few days after the event, and they were saying, are you ready to talk about how Airwallex can streamline your payments and such? And I was like, no, I'm sorry, I'm not the wrong person, but thanks for follow-up, and you guys definitely are on my radar because of this event. So yeah, you did build trust with me for sure. But yeah, what I'm interested in is that I saw you invited some journalists there. So there were like a bunch of interviews taken. There were a lot of pictures, lots of videos. So what I'm interested is what kind of outcomes were you aiming for? What deliverables did you have? Kind of what goals did you set for your team other than this philosophical aspect of shifting perspectives and showing people that I'm still not even sure like what perspective we should shift, but please don't answer this. Answer the kind of...
No, but it's important though, because it's partially the wrong question. Because if I'm going to answer a question around tactical outcomes, we're missing the ballgame completely. This is like, for example, this is one execution that kicks off a broader year-long 18-month campaign. And so over the next 18 months, we unpack it. And so I think
shifting perspectives would be like
that's to create a platform, right? And so that was the tip of the iceberg. What you're going to see over the next several months is digital going live, more events in local markets, and kind of local kind of adaptations of that
with this narrative shifting perspectives.
Exactly. And so that was the launch of it, right? And so you know, if I take such a short-term view, and I think again, this is why many people sometimes get stuck in their marketing because they're so in the weeds, being like this event, and so obsessed about this minute tracking, they miss the bigger picture. So, but I can tell you in terms of what we're hoping to get from that specific event, one, it was about cut through. Because again, there's so much going on that weekend for Singapore. Singapore F1 is one of the most crowded, popular races of the calendar. Sky Sports chose to feature our event.
Was it proactive? Did you reach out to them and tell? Or like, did you use a PR firm to negotiate this, or like, how does it happen?
Well, it's both. I mean, we have relationships with them as well. McLaren has ties with them as well. But that said,
but they can say no.
They can say no to anyone, right? And so they obviously get pitched a lot. And what they're looking for is they're looking for uniqueness. They're looking for a story that they can tell. And again, they don't want to get pitched to see the same kind of talking heads, Lando showing up at some, discussion where he's sitting in a chair and just nodding and again saying, as you said, word salads.
Yeah.
They want a unique concept. And so for me, it was, we're not spending that much money, quite frankly, and we're getting coverage on a national scale that we've, say again, you can't pay for that type of coverage, right? So for us, it was get the brand out from a media amplification perspective, engage with kind of key prospects that we hadn't engaged with previously. So kind of very defined with the sales team. Prospects or customers that we wanted to actually build and strengthen a relationship with, that was there as well. And then also media engagements, because as we're thinking about building and building and building, we're at the stage now where we're still, getting more and more relationships with folks. So it was, again, there was some pipeline and some kind of revenue involved, but that's not the point. It was, how do you take the opportunity, cement the brand, and you keep on building on top of that. But that was tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was looking at this event as kind of a single thing, as a single campaign. But now that you say that you're going to push this narrative further and further, it of course makes a lot more sense, because I was like, yeah, I attended the event, Shifting Perspectives. I didn't really understand what's going on. But yeah, if I am in the market for what you guys are doing, and I would see that you're pushing this narrative, yeah, eventually, it's hard to explain something to people, even simple things. It's hard to reach people with the simple things. So with a more kind of philosophical concept, yeah, it takes time.
It takes time. We have 12 to 18 months to do it.
Yeah.
But the important thing is that at least it's on your radar. At least people, like the number of people that even pinged me from other markets to say, really cool stuff you guys are doing with F1. Saw the article, saw the post online, saw the coverage. It's not every day that we get people pinging from all different countries to say, at least great work, and at least people are interested. I need people interested so that I can hook you and then start to engage with you over time.
You mentioned to me previously that this F1 deal was pitched to you by an agency, like sports marketing agency or something like this. I wonder how they are involved after you sign the deal. Do they still kind of do campaigns with you or stuff like this? Or do they just need to sell the deal and then your in-house team works directly with F1 team, or like is the agency still involved?
It really varies. So I know sports marketing is sometimes very foreign territory for folks. And to be quite frank, it was very foreign for me until we actually dove into this for nearly a year. But agencies come in many different shapes and forms. So I think some will specialize in proactively kind of pitching you the deal. So just they'll cold call you and say, hey, we have a relationship with this brand or this rights holder. Are you interested? Sometimes it's the other way around, where we will say enlist an agency and we say, we're interested in these opportunities or these sports. Can you go out and come back with a proposal for us and tell us what's available in the market? So we went both routes. But it just so happened that this McLaren opportunity came in through kind of a cold outreach.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, I mean that's how a lot of these agencies work. I mean, any type of agency typically, right? You're out hunting for business.
What else was on the table, if you can share, of course? I wonder what kind of other opportunities you were considering.
Yeah, I mean, we in the sports world, we were considering. It primarily came down to Premier League football. And F1. But I think F1 was, again, mainly because of the kind of global nature.
Okay. So you joined Airwallex 2 years ago,
yes.
Right? And you had a 4-year stint as a head of marketing at Stripe for APAC region. So I wonder if we go back to the 2 years ago when you just joined Airwallex, the company was already doing pretty well, right? So their marketing was already in decent shape, but they needed probably some next level, which is why they hired you. So I wonder what you could share about their marketing 2 years ago and what you brought to the table, what they were doing well already and what you kind of changed or improved or added.
Sure. Well, I think I'm now on your podcast, so I've like peaked in my career. It will after this day it just goes down. No, so I think the marketing at Airwallex, I mean, the company's been around since 2015 or so. So marketing, I think, was one of the more nascent functions. And so when I came on board, it was mainly to add more structure. and kind of build out kind of core competencies. Marketing, for most of its history, was kind of a function that supported one segment of sales. And so there wasn't really any cohesive thinking around the brand as a whole. There wasn't much cohesive thinking around, say, product marketing, partner marketing, field marketing. How do we stitch everything together? And so I think what I came on board to do was add more rigor and structure and kind of build out the core competencies, build the foundations that we can start to kind of scale it. So again, to be very specific, one of the first things I looked at was how do you construct the team, kind of short term, and then how do we start to build it out in the midterm? One big gap was we didn't even have product marketing. And I think, again, that's a mistake that many startups or many kind of even scale-ups make, is that you pump all this money when you get funded into advertising, usually digital ads, usually Google ads, and you kind of miss the boat to say, well, do we even have the right target segment? Do we have the right core messaging? Do we have the right positioning? And that's why I've seen many companies miss the boat, because they spend all this money, don't get results. And they say, it's distribution strategy. It's not distribution strategy. Oftentimes it's because you didn't actually invest in that first step, which is product marketing, which is a root. So that's kind of where we're starting to invest. We're also starting to invest a lot in the tech stack, because any modern day marketing team, you need to have the right tech to distribute in a multi-channel way and to track in a multi-channel way. And the third, which I think should be music to your ears, is content and SEO. I don't want to be paying for acquisitions and paying for new customers that we should be getting because we're, on the basis of kind of quality content. And so that's the other area that I've been trying to invest in with the team. How do we build out content and have it also intertwine with brand fairly well?
We'll talk about all that later.
Sure.
You mentioned product marketing
yes,
as one of the kind of core things that you started introducing to the team and to the marketing function in general. Similar thing happened to me at Ahrefs, because I've been with the company for 9 years.
Yeah.
And I think for the first 7 years, we didn't have a dedicated function called product marketing. And only now we started developing this team. And I'm realizing that this team is pretty damn important.
Yes.
But once I started putting people into product marketing team, I needed to define what product marketing is and how it is different from content marketing, social media marketing, and other marketings. So I would love to hear your definition. What is product marketing?
Yeah, product marketing. So this one is a bit of a cliche definition, which I hear a lot, but I think it sums it up well. Product marketing's job is to take the voice of the market and feed it into your org. And so there's one type of kind of heavily feedback loop role, which is you take all the insights. So whether it's through formula research, win-loss interviews, desk research, whatever it is, you get insight from the market, you pump it back into your organization so that working very closely with your product teams, you can start to kind of get that feedback and have product kind of innovation happen through that lens. The second part of product marketing, though, is you take the organizational insight and you feed it outward to the market. And so that involves everything from sales enablement to how you think about launching new products to kind of core messaging and positioning. But you're kind of always straddling, you're kind of at this middle point between product org and sales/commercial org. And you're the one oftentimes kind of doing the kind of information back and forth. But it should precede other marketing functions. So content, for example, content marketing should take cues from product marketing. Same thing with social, same thing with field. Because those teams need to understand who the right segment is. Those teams need to understand what the core messaging is. Those teams need to understand what is the nuance that you should write about. Like, I would just say one thing before, again, I put you to sleep. But this is the most important thing I'm going to say for our entire time as being best friends for the next kind of hour. The most important thing to say is everything starts with insight. And people oftentimes don't get insight right. Saying the sky is blue is not an insight. Like saying the day after tomorrow is, Wednesday, that's not an insight. That's obvious. Insight is something uniquely interesting, and insight is something which is kind of unknown, which is going to spark interest. that is where product marketing needs to sit. They need to tell you obvious things. They need to tell you things which are not obvious, because that's how you get your differentiation as a brand, as a company.
Interesting. So every company is different,
Yes.
obviously. And in the case of Ahrefs, our marketing department are kind of the first customers of our product. So your marketing department are not necessarily customers of Airwallex. I don't know for sure, but you said it's a B2B product. So they're not kind of B2C people. So yeah, anyway. So our marketing department are kind of the first users of our product, which is why the part of responsibility of product marketing, which you said, so you mentioned two parts. One, take insight from market and bring it to the company, and then take insight from company/product and take it to the market. So the first thing is kind of our entire marketing department is encouraged to do,
Yes.
because they're users, and we happily take any kind of insights and feature requests from entire marketing department. So in my case, that wasn't necessarily a function of product marketing department specifically, but also I feel that in some other organizations, this would be kind of product development or product research team that kind of studies the market. But yeah, anyway, those are slight differences depending on the company. What I wanted to share from my perspective is that when I had to branch out or separate product marketing and content marketing, I defined it like this. Content marketing talks to people who are interested in the problem. Product marketing talks to people who are interested in the product.
Okay.
So if someone is interested how to do SEO, how to audit my website, how to build links, how do I measure my domain authority, it's our content marketing team. They create content around those things.
Yes.
If anyone is interested what Ahrefs can do for me, what are the tools in Ahrefs, can Ahrefs help with social media marketing? Can Ahrefs help with brand research? These are the things that product marketing team has to answer. So I wonder if that kind of definition makes sense.
It makes sense. I mean, I think it goes back to your point. Every organization is kind of different. And to be fair, there are different definitions of product marketing.
Yeah.
My view is still, even in the kind of content example, I would still rely on product marketers to be feeding some insight into content still. So I just think it has to span everything. And going back to the first piece that you mentioned, the challenge that sometimes folks face is, yes, we can kind of dog food our own products, and yes, we can, again, give feedback, but sometimes we are not the target audience, or sometimes we're not that next segment of opportunity.
Yeah.
And unless you actually go out and do it in the market, you sometimes miss feedback from a potentially lucrative segment that you're not serving at the moment. So I think dog fooding absolutely should be done no matter what. But I'd still say push a little bit into kind of more non-dog fooding insights as well.
One other interesting bit that we were able to dig up.
Yes. Every time you smile, I get terrified. I think like, what's he gonna say? What's he gonna find?
So there was some article about you. I don't remember what it was, but there was an interesting kind of responsibility that was given to you according to this article. So I'm quoting, as well as refactoring Airwallex's regional structure, Zhang is one of the co-founders.
Yeah, Jack's our CEO, and co-founder.
Added leaders to help address the company's unhappy employee base. Jon Stona joined as VP of Marketing from rival Stripe with a mandate to calibrate that function and amend its hiring practices. So
yes.
You had to deal with something along these lines. Can you tell me more about this?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I make no pretenses to say, you know, I joined, I don't think the marketing team was in a good place. I think we had great people, but I don't think they were necessarily set up for success because there wasn't really a central function and there wasn't really much of a leadership team. And so I remember even the first 2 weeks I came on board, you know, people hadn't necessarily had, again, leadership in place to actually have career conversations. I remember having one-on-ones with folks that actually wanted to be designers, but they were in marketing roles. And it was just, and there were kind of core functions that were missing. There wasn't really alignment across marketing and sales and product and design. And so that led to just a lot of inefficiency, and it also led to people not necessarily being engaged. I mean, why would you if you, again, are facing all this friction and individually and organizationally? So yeah, a big priority for the first 6 months, and even now, is how do you, again, set up the team, the structure the right way, and bring on really great leaders. And that's why our hiring process can sometimes feel a bit lengthy, because I'm not of the school of thought that you hire quickly and, just because you're kind of growing the company, you kind of bring in whoever. I will keep a role open for even a year sometimes. Plus, if I don't feel, if it's not the right person, because you need, especially in the first hires for a function, that person is going to define a lot of your team's culture, and that person is going to then recruit other people. So especially for the first person in a function, first product marketer, first field marketer, have to get that right.
Have you watched the TV series, I think on Netflix, called Billions?
I've seen some of it. I'm not a massive Billions fan, but I've occasionally.
Yeah, but basically there's this guy who is head of a venture fund or something.
Yes.
And there's this guy from the government side, and they're battling each other. And the guy from the VC fund side, he has this lady who's like a therapist in their company or something. But all the people, when they kind of struggle with something, with their kind of personal things, kind of something within the corporation or something, they go to her and she kind of fixes them to perform. Do you feel that you were doing this kind of job to a degree?
Fixing them to perform? To be honest, not really. I mean, I think what I needed to do is actually come in and just, quite frankly, firstly, just listen, because you don't want to, especially you don't want to be a leader coming in and just day one, you think everything is broken and then you enforce some kind of top down. It was really just the first kind of couple of months, just hearing everyone out, like literally having one-on-ones with every single person.
That's like a therapist.
Is it? This is kind of what we're doing right now.
I mean, I'm asking because looking back at my past, I would say 4 years, because our team started growing. I previously worked with like maybe 10 people.
Yeah.
Right now it's 30. And at this scale, some people get burnt out. Some people lose direction. Some people have personal tensions with each other. And everyone goes to you to solve this. Or you feel responsible to identify that something is wrong, figure it out, and help this person solve. So it's not that a person is necessarily coming to me and saying, oh, team, I burnt out, help me kind of progress in my career. But you just feel this when you're having one-on-ones with them, and you start kind of pointing them in some direction. But this is not marketing, but probably this is leadership, right? So I wonder, for someone like you, and you're probably managing a couple hundred people in the marketing department total. We're not talking about
not
numbers,
quite, but we're getting there. We're building.
Yeah. Anyway, how much of your kind of day-to-day work is those kinds of leadership things over more, I don't know, tactical and strategical marketing things?
I mean, I'd say it's half and half. I mean, like half. especially if you're kind of building a company at this stage and running at the pace we're running. Like, you still, no matter how you cut it, you still need good people to do good work, right? I mean, you think about economic arguments, any kind of growth kind of equation that you look at, and economists will argue about this from a macro standpoint, it's capital times labor times A. Now, depending on the economists you talk to, some people define A as institutions, some people define A as population growth, whatever it is, there's always going to be capital and labor involved in any type of growth kind of calculation. The labor piece is quite important, because that will oftentimes define, is your organization a laggard or is your organization on the forefront? It's, do you attract the best people? Do you grow the best people? Do you retain the best people? And so you can't shortchange the investment there. But what I will say to what you're saying is, there comes a point where you as an individual leader, you have to realize your limits, because when you take on a lot of, deep conversation with folks, that also takes a toll on yourself, right? There's only so much that emotionally you can also be invested. And there's also so many hours in the day. So once you start to get to, even 20, 30 person organization, you immediately have to start thinking, how do you scale yourself? How do you make sure that the values that you care about as a leader get distributed to the next layer, and then they're able to distribute it accordingly?
How do you do this?
Well, the hiring process is, that's what I'm saying. I'm fairly obsessive with hiring. And we don't just hire based on functional skills. I also hire and assess values and operating principles. And that's why we kind of define operating principles. So it's not random. It's, here's what we're looking for. Here's some of the questions we'll use to test it. I also assess, is this someone that I would be happy to sit with next to on a plane for 5 hours, right? It's not, yes, you can do your job well, so can 5,000 other people. What's going to make you successful here and what's going to make you successful on this team is, do you have the right underlying principles? And I care a lot about that for my leaders and my managers. If you have a strong manager, if you don't, like, it's like fitness, right? You can have your head, you can have your legs to run. It's your torso. The torso is a management layer. That's why people do crunches and core exercise. If that's weak, your entire org collapses. Doesn't matter how your head or your feet are. It's that management layer that has to get right.
Do you, because again, as my team was growing, I had to create a bunch of documents and have everyone read them and kind of remind people once a quarter, once in 2 quarters, please don't forget to reread these documents. One of them is how to bring value as a marketer. And I'm kind of outlining what exactly I value in people and how, if they want to progress in their careers, what I'm looking for generally, not specific. Like if you're doing PPC, then you have to do this. The second thing is how we communicate. And like there are actually, this is the most simple thing probably. It's like people can message you outside of work hours, but you don't have to reply outside of work hours. So these kinds of things. Also, and the final document is on giving and receiving feedback.
Love that. Because
there's often a lot of tension when people start commenting on each other's work. And people get defensive, people get aggressive, blah, 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 blah. And they had to, I went myself through I made a lot of mistakes. I got in quarrels with a lot of people in the company, but I was able to kind of learn from this process, and I'm trying to be more careful when I'm giving and receiving feedback to people, and I wanted to codify it in the document. But so those documents, I feel once I wrote it down and once I shared it with the team, I saw that a lot of things improved. I actually saw that, I'm reading someone's comment and I'm seeing that they're kind of implementing, they're being mindful of what I've learned. But at the same time, going back to this Billions TV series and that lady who was kind of fixing everyone's brains, I sometimes wonder, like, isn't this kind of a dedicated role at the company? And if we would have, because I'm not a therapist, I'm not a professional who can help people, who can resolve problems between people, because some of these problems arise from different personalities.
Of course.
And you need to tell people, that person is of that personality. You are of that personality. This is why when you're saying this, they see it as this. And I'm wondering, should I ever be doing this? Or maybe we should hire someone like this lady so that people would go to her and she would explain
full-time therapist,
Yeah. Like, did you have anything like that in Stripe? Because Stripe is a pretty big company. I wouldn't be surprised if you have massagers there.
Well, when I left, no masseuses. I don't believe. Who knows? Who knows what's happened since? To be fair, like a lot of that is it comes back to, again, knowing our limits, right? I mean, we might want to kind of do that. We might kind of have the urge to do it, but you're right. I mean, I'm not trained as a therapist. You're not trained as a therapist. But that's why a lot of companies also invest in a people and talent function, right? I think there are a few dimensions. There's a manager dimension, again, which we kind of touched on. There's individual coaching dimension, which is something that you can have either with your directs or your skip levels, or just quite frankly, anyone in the org. But then there's an organizational level. And that comes down to, how do you kind of take these processes, document them, codify them? So that comes to, what are your hiring principles? Down to like, what types of questions do you ask during interviews? Comes down to your performance management. How often is that cycle? How do you actually rate someone? How do you give feedback? At what cadence? Do you have a system, technologies that allow real-time feedback or ad hoc? So, I think really a good people and talent function and a good leadership team in general, like for the company, will make sure that organizationally, that feedback and that, everything that we talk about in terms of therapy can at least be supported at scale. And then on an individual basis, that's where managers really have to step up. And if they need additional help, they go to people and talent.
Let's switch gears. Very general question, which makes it all more interesting.
Yes.
How does marketing work at Airwallex?
How does marketing work at Airwallex? That is a general question and is an interesting question. Marketing, I think it works in a way that we are trying to push towards kind of two things. And everything we do is in service of these two things. First is we are a challenger company. We, again, need to find a way in a relatively short amount of time to find a way to build brand trust, awareness, familiarity by and large. Particularly in the fintech space, it's notorious that even if someone knows your name and knows your brand, 90% of the time they have no idea what you do. So that's kind of number one. And that's actually true for many marketing organizations. The second is we're also a private company, right? So with potential IPO ambitions. So a lot of that then comes down to how does marketing drive repeatable and predictable kind of revenue for the company? You're in a very dangerous territory if you're running a marketing team and you're seen as a cost item. And a lot of kind of marketers are seen that way. You're just kind of you're spending money.
Yeah.
We needed to kind of come in and really flip it to say marketing, not cost item, marketing strategic function. And so you start to do that by saying, well, I'm going to show you that you give me X and I'm going to even pay for myself to exist because we will generate Y in terms of revenue. And again, that's going to come through, advertising, SEO, affiliates, influencers, you name it. But those have been the two main mandates that we've set for the team. And so everything we do has to do one of those two things, ideally both. Otherwise, you're on the wrong bus.
This is a very tough situation to be in. And I am extremely lucky that for the 9 years that I've been with Ahrefs, I didn't have to prove my value. But at the same time, our marketing expenses were very, very, very low. Even some of my friends or some people who I met here in Singapore were telling me that I should coin something like efficient marketing and write a book about efficient marketing.
That, yes.
Because how little we were spending on marketing, but how effective it was in growing the company. I mean, we're bootstrapped. We were always profitable. We never kind of overspend or blitz scale, as they call. And we crossed 100 million in annual recurring revenue fairly fast. At some years we were growing 70-80% per year.
Yeah.
And our marketing was like 5-6 people and almost no spend. So still our spend on performance marketing is very, very low. But back to the topic that you mentioned, you need to prove the fact that your marketing is working. How do you do this?
Yeah, so it's not necessarily easiest to do, but I mean, there's also a bit of a playbook, which oftentimes comes down to, are you tracking the right thing to begin with? Are you tracking the right thing at the right time horizon? I think those two dimensions are where I think sometimes folks get it wrong. Because if there's endless number of metrics that you can track in terms of marketing. You can track, again, whether it's pipeline or leads or opportunities or signups or whatever it is. But you kind of need to align with the organization. What is the actually one or two that you're driving towards? Otherwise, it's going to be all over the place. The second thing you actually have to do, and particularly with the broader leadership team, is align on time horizon. Because to your point, we can't necessarily show up and say, we're going to build this big SEO operation, this big content operation, staff up the team. You're going to see results next month. And sometimes, quite frankly, marketers oversell that. Too optimistic or trying to actually get the business case over the line. And in reality, you're setting yourself up for failure. So for example, when we pitched in, let's start to build out the content team, let's start to invest in SEO, we're very deliberate in the document to say, we're not going to see results on this investment until X months after or 1 year after. So please know that it's coming, but we're building a 3-year plan. And this is what it's going to cost for 3 years, and we need the sustained investment. And here are the leading indicators. So I can't necessarily report to you that all of a sudden signups are going to shoot through the roof on SEO. What I can start telling you after 3 months is that traffic has started to increase, high intent keywords rankings have moved from this to that, and we're tracking that. I mean, we track that every month, every quarter, and we report on those kind of leading metrics. So I think metric selection, quite critical. Operationalizing how you track, time horizon, also quite critical.
Okay, let's get from the broad question how marketing at Airwallex works into very specifics, because
Let's do it.
I researched how marketing at Airwallex works, and now we're going to discuss every individual kind of direction or strategy. So I want to start with the brand. So you mentioned 3 words in regards to your brand: trust, awareness, familiarity.
Yeah.
So again, I want to ask you a broad question: how to grow a brand, but also while answering it,
Yes,
try to weave in answers about trust, awareness, and familiarity.
Okay, so broadly, how to grow the brand?
Yeah.
We need another 10 hours or so for this. It's not, people haven't even, we've written entire books on this, Tim. Well, it's clearly working because we've incepted you to wear our brand colors on this podcast, right? Okay, so I think growing brand is, if we kind of dial it back, you kind of need to take the stance that everything you do needs to be accretive to grow the brand. Everything has to be accretive to the brand. Like, it's not just a marketing job. And that's also something which I think CMOs have to land with their companies. Amazon, for example, built the brand on customer service. They didn't build a brand just doing advertising, right? So, everything you do, even I get made fun of sometimes as well, because at any company I've been at for the past 15 years, I have a policy where at least once or twice a week, I wear the company shirt. Because every single surface is an opportunity for you to promote your company, right? So I think you have to take that view of the brand to say every single surface, whether it's an advertising, it's a clothes that you wear, it's a one-sheeter that you put together, is meant to grow the brand. How we grow the brand, though, is about kind of how you grow your brand as a human being. Oftentimes, it's about, are you a reliable brand? Are you a credible brand? Are there intimacy? Do people feel like they can connect with you at just a non-superficial level? And then, do you have low self-orientation, which is, do people feel that you are there for them more so than yourself? That's how humans grow trust relationships. That's how brands also have to grow trusted engagements with their customers as well. Concrete example, because we've been talking about McLaren and F1. If again we think about those 4 dimensions, McLaren gives us a lot of that. McLaren gives us the credibility to say this is a private company, but McLaren's chosen them as a partner as well. They're not going to go anytime soon, right? This is McLaren heritage brand, and the whole F1 piece elevates our kind of stance. Reliability, McLaren's using our product. They're obviously not going to choose us, given everything's at stake for their business. So stamp of approval. Intimacy. Sports has a massive fan base, right? And oftentimes you'll see all these pitches where they say followers of this brand are more used to buying their sponsors' items and non-sponsored items. Like, sports is a lot about that passion, that emotion, right? And so you get that intimacy. And then the last piece around self-orientation, it comes down to events that we'll do. We'll again invite people to even the event in Singapore, right? Why don't you go spend some time with Lando, fan events, right? And so we're saying we're with you, it's not just about us. So in that one example, you're kind of deconstructing different aspects of brand building and trust. You can do that with influencers, you can do that with your advertising, but and it's not just an overnight exercise. You kind of have to keep doing this repeatedly, day in and day out. But I can go into specific, like if there are specific examples, I mean, happy to kind of dive into anything else.
Of course.
Yeah, please.
Of course there are. So some 5 or 6 years ago when someone asked me about building a brand, what did I know about building a brand 6 years ago? Not sure I know much more today, but still, I gave an answer that like every touch point with your company is contributing to your brand. People are talking to your customer support. People are taking swag. What kind of quality is it? Blah, blah, blah. That's one side to it. Yeah, you have these touch points where people come across your company, and whatever brand you're building, well, everyone wants their brand to be looked as kind of a quality thing. Probably not everyone, right? Some people have different values. Maybe someone wants to be cheap anyway. So yeah, you need to kind of make sure that whatever you stand for is seen in those touch points. But what I'm lately interested in terms of building a brand is the awareness/familiarity aspect. And I've stumbled upon the psychological principle of mere exposure effect in some of the books that I was reading, which says that the more people get exposed to a certain, I don't know, brand, product, or thing, the more they develop affinity for it. So then later, when given the choice, they would choose a more familiar option.
Yes.
How do you make people aware of something? How do you make them familiar with something? Advertising.
One way, yeah.
I would love to hear about another, but yeah, let me finish this. I'm almost done. So it seems that the more money you pump in advertising, the bigger your brand is. And in my previous interview, I had the CMO of Crypto.com. We also discussed brand quite a bit with him. They're pumping insane amount of money into advertising, like a $700 million 20-year deal to rename Staples Center into Crypto.com.
Yes.
That is like 20 years of Crypto.com being on all the screens of all sports events. This is just a pure awareness. There's no... Yeah, there is in a way a message that they are here to stay. They're here for 20 years. They're renaming a building. Yeah, you can kind of tie some philosophical aspect in it, but just in terms of awareness and advertising, it seems the more money you pump into getting your logo out there, the bigger your brand is. So what are your thoughts on this?
I think at a high level that's true, but I mean, I think we have to engage with it one layer down intellectually. I mean, yes, the folks are doing that. And it's not just with Crypto.com. I mean, it's the broader industry in general.
Coca-Cola.
No, I mean, in terms of like crypto blockchain, I mean, I think a big reason why so many companies sponsored sports teams and stadiums and did these massive celebrity deals is because they were in an environment where they're trying to get regulatory approval, and they're trying to actually make the argument that we are mainstream enough, that we're credible enough, we're here to stay. So it wasn't just about awareness. It's about that underlying piece, again, coming down to trust. And so I think that the thesis or the hypothesis is that if you can actually show up repeatedly and show up in a mainstream way, then that starts to, particularly also with regulators, ease them into kind of approvals more, make them feel the industry is less for something, not just for speculative folks that are bad actors, but for the everyday person. So, I mean, that's really a big reason why kind of crypto companies kind of did these investments. But I mean, your question, yeah, broadly, sure, you spend more money, yes, more people will see your logo, but then what? I mean, going back to our previous discussion to start, people can see the logo, but then they have to do something with that. They have to see it in a positive light, ideally. And that's,
so you need to connect it to something.
To connect it to something, right? That depends on where are they seeing the logo? How are they seeing the logo? Who are they seeing the logo with? And again, I'm going to come back to the F1 piece, not because that's the only channel we use, but because we've started talking about it. So I'm trying to connect the dots. But that was the other piece when we looked at who do we sponsor. It's a company like McLaren has other like-minded tech companies. So we are surrounded by Google of the world. We're surrounded by, Cisco's of the world, Dropbox, right? And so we're saying that is our peer set. That's how we would like to be seen. So I think, yes, getting the brand out is great, but I mean, it has to be more than that. There has to be the so what and what's next of it.
I wonder how far you want to take this brand awareness and brand familiarity, because recently, as I started thinking more about our own brand, about Ahrefs brand, I realized that search volume of your brand, how many times people search for it in Google, is a great indication of how big you are. And they took you, Airwallex. Your global search volume, according to Ahrefs, is 71,000 around the world. And what's interesting, the top 3 countries are Australia number 1, United States number 2, and Hong Kong number 3. And they compared that to Wise.
Yes.
You said they're B2C. This is why they're bigger, because their global search volume is 1.1 million.
Yes.
That's magnitudes better than yours. And their top 3 countries is United States, United Kingdom, and Brazil. Anyway, I know that you guys have started from Australia, so it explains why Australia is the top country for you in terms of searches for your brand. But Airwallex 71K globally, Wise 1.1 million globally, but they're B2C, as we've investigated, you're B2B. I wonder if you have any KPIs or goals in mind where you think you need to take Airwallex brand.
Yeah, I mean, we have KPIs in terms of kind of survey-based awareness. I think you're right. Search traffic is probably a good proxy and a good kind of indicator for that. And so next year we are going to have goals around kind of traffic. I'm not sure. I mean, I think we'll have them by market. But I mean, for us, what we tend to do is more of kind of semi-annual awareness dips because we want to make sure it's to the right people. Like if it's 71,000 people who are random, it's a waste of time, right? If it's 1.1 million people, like for example, I don't necessarily want 900,000 of Wise's searches if they're searching for consumer transfers. That means I'm doing my job poorly because I'll be spending ad dollars on people trying to click into a consumer solution only to hit my page and bounce, right? And so, and again, this is kind of where the branding piece and the product marketing piece come together. I need to make sure that my advertising, my branding appeals to the right audience. Because I used to have this debate at past companies where you don't say, oh, we don't know the brand or we don't know this. And I'd say, well, or you know, my friends don't know the brand. And I'd say, well, first of all, is your friend a payment decision maker? Because if they're not, that's great that they don't know that they don't know the brand, because I'm not wasting money trying to acquire them. So answer your question, yes, we will have targets, and yes, we kind of monitor kind of brand metrics through the funnel as well as competitors fairly rigorously. But, you know, I don't necessarily I need to make sure it's the right traffic.
One awesome insight that I got from the dinner we had together from the lady from TripAdvisor was when she said that one of their goals is to increase the amount of branded searches, and not necessarily just for TripAdvisor, but things to do in Sydney, TripAdvisor.
Yes.
So when people append their brand to search query, I think this is a great intersection between SEO and brand, and this also kind of, in a way, solves your argument about people just searching for the brand might not be the right people.
Exactly.
But if you see the branded searches and they are on point, they're about things that people are trying to investigate how Airwallex does this or how Airwallex does that. I think this is an interesting metric to monitor in terms of your brand activities. Like what people are searching. Are your messaging, are your product marketing messaging reaching the right audiences?
Exactly. Because I mean, you also mentioned earlier around the comment around a commoditized space, right? And just moving money from A to B. That was probably Airwallex 8 years ago. And so my job is to make sure people realize that the company has moved way beyond that into an entire kind of integrated software and, you know, no longer a commodity. But that's where the familiarity aspect is also so critical. Like there's awareness. Yes, people understand you. It's the right people, but they have to understand what you do. And I think what you just said is quite an important metric to track.
I have a very specific question.
Please.
Because I found a quote on, I think it was your pricing page. It says, you don't need a bank to run your business. For someone like me, and I'm not your target audience, but still, if I imagine if I were, that would be an interesting statement for me to digest and comprehend. So the specific question is, who came up with this sentence? Or at least which team does this belong to?
That would be the marketing team. I don't know who came up with that specific sentence. It may have actually come before my time. I'm not sure.
Interesting.
Because there was an entire campaign that was done, I think in 2022, around being better than a bank. Because again, a lot of it is helping people take what's familiar to them and then, juxtaposing a newer, better, more modern way.
Okay, next question. Do you personally edit any copy for your main brand campaigns? Or let's take the homepage of your website,
100%.
which is kind of your billboard, your main space where people land to review what your company does. You personally kind of edit or write off the copy that is on your homepage.
Yes, I mean we're still a scale-up company, right? So I tend to get quite hands-on, and that's also from a hiring standpoint. That's what I look for in my team members. Like, there's no one sitting here delegating tasks. Like, we're in the trenches.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm very particular about the most trafficked page of our website. I want to make sure that all the wording, all the messaging is on point.
But I will say though, when it comes to limitations, I also want to make sure I bring on folks that are really, really specialized at this, because there's a lot of stuff which I don't do well. And I need to make sure that we have folks around who can do it better, right?
Okay, time for this piece of paper.
Yes.
That has been lying here waiting for you. So this is from the page called Operating Principles. Let me show it to the camera for anyone who is watching this on YouTube. So you have 6 things stating who you are, and 6 things how we work together. So first of all, what a coincidence, 6 here, 6 there. It's not like you shoehorned anything to make it equal. But I will read you because
Sure.
you guys have this thing on your website. It's one of the pages that you can easily find as you browse the top menu. So tell me more about it. Why do you have such a prominent place for this thing? And is this thing really working? I'm sure you will say it is. Otherwise, like, you have to defend that it is there. But
we'd also take it down if it wasn't working, right? I mean, like, we're also the type of company where we're not just going to put something up and it just stays there because someone else,
fair.
That's not really the Airwallex DNA. So if it was, but I will say this came up from an executive team offsite we had last year. And we started that executive team offsite not necessarily having the thinking we would come up with entirely new operating principles, but as the discussion kind of flowed naturally and we started thinking, well, how do we get the company more engaged? How do we think about ways to make sure that as we scale, culture could also scale and continue to grow? It kind of naturally started morphing into this direction. You can't ordain culture. You can't just put up a bunch of posters around and say, same thing like culture innovation. You can't say, be innovative and hire a chief innovation officer and expect things to change, right? But what you can do is you can take an honest assessment of yourself and your values, which are oftentimes very abstract and very philosophical, and translate them in a way that hopefully your employees, whether you've been here 10 years or 10 days, can at least take some of that and use to navigate the organization. Like, it's very difficult when you're scaling a company when things aren't on paper, because people get confused around how are you making decisions? Who are the types of people that you're hiring? How are you getting promoted? How do you actually, do a trade-off vis-a-vis, something else? Now, you might say it's operating principles. You might call them something else. Stripe has operating principles. Amazon, Netflix, a number of companies have this. But it really is a way to translate something philosophical and abstract into something more actionable for the everyday employee. And is it working? Depends how much you weave it into your decision making. Again, if you just put this up on a wall, who cares? Operating principles now are in our hiring rubric. So literally, when we're filling out feedback in our interview system, it lists each of the operating principles, and we will write down how did the candidate stack up against this. It shows up in our performance management. So when we're doing every 6 months ratings and reviews, we speak about that in the context of operating principles. It comes up in promotion discussions. It comes up in just day-to-day lexicon. So I have seen a positive impact, and I've heard, at least from the team, it's working. But I can't do some scientific tests to say like, yes, 5% increase in engagement. But what I can say is, again, anecdotally, we've seen in the scores, things have been trending upwards, and at least we're starting to hear also from newer employees as well that they kind of grok what the company's about.
I can do a scientific test. Let's see how many of them you can name by heart. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, I won't. I won't take you there.
Well, the funny thing though is you're asking me about copywriting.
Yeah,
I copywrote a bunch of those.
Oh, okay.
So it was on the way to Legoland in Malaysia with my family, and we were kind of trying to wordsmith things. And I remember sitting down while our kid was there, like throwing Legos around and just trying to wordsmith.
No, I actually do feel that those things are useful to codify. And I had a similar conversation with CMO of Crypto.com. we were discussing, I saw a framework on LinkedIn where someone gave a bunch of questions which you have to answer to kind of codify your brand, your values, what it stands for. And we were discussing if this is a legit exercise. And I was hoping he would say, this is bullshit. You don't need this BS, of course.
Yeah.
You don't need this kind of thing. But he didn't. And this surprised me. So I started thinking more and more about those things.
But people can tell if it's BS, right? People can really tell quickly between a company that only does this for, PR and again, just fluff. Like, if you your employees have to see you actually using it day in, day out. That's when it matters. If it's just, again, you print out a bunch of crap on a piece of paper and stick it up and you may do a town hall and announce it, no one cares. So, but you have to be committed to it.
But this is intertwined with your brand, right? What your company believes in is kind of what your brand stands for. So this is not just an exercise in organizational culture and values, but also the brand and how you're perceived by the outside.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Let's talk more specifically about some other strategies. So we've talked about branding quite a bit. By the way, I forgot to get an answer about the question about differentiating your brand when you are essentially a utility, commodity. Not sure which word to pick.
There's a product answer and there's a marketing answer. The product answer is that we have built out the product in a way that we're no longer a commodity. So, I think that's one of the benefits why folks come onto Airwallex is that, in any individual space, you can see commoditization happening. So when it comes to, say, accepting payments, that margin of kind of differentiation is only shrinking. And so if we were just a company that accepted payments, I would concede that. But the fact is we're a company that allows you to accept payments, hold money, earn kind of yield on that balance, do FX, remit money, do corporate cards, do expense management, do bill payments, do invoicing, embedded finance. So if you want to build your own fintech, you can build on top of Airwallex. That's no longer a commodity. So that's a product answer. The marketing answer is part of why we're kind of here and exist as a function is to tell that story and to stitch it together. And that's what I mean about familiarity. Because I can't just do marketing to say Airwallex. Otherwise, people might think Airwallex equals FX or Airwallex equals payments. I need to say Airwallex is, global platform. And then the next layer down is, here's how I'm going to tell you concretely, if you're a travel company, how I'm going to benefit your business. If you're an e-commerce company, here's how I'm going to benefit your business. So it's product and marketing.
That segues us very nicely into my next topic of discussion, which is product marketing. We already started talking about it, but I have a very specific question because what I saw on your website, you seem to have 3 categories: business account, core API, and embedded finance. And I counted 14 different, whether we can call them products or not. Anyway, you already, when you were just speaking, you mentioned a lot of different things that Airwallex does. In terms of product marketing, what I'm wondering is every individual product, every individual, function, use case, whatever you call it, is it handled by its own product marketing team, or you have one team to promote everything, or you have like 3 teams for those 3 things, business account core. So how is it organized?
Sure. So we're doing a bit of a rejigging right now. You can actually see it on our Australia site where we're kind of recutting the kind of product segmentation, but it will come down into a kind of a business account piece, which is, so for example, if you need to open up, foreign and domestic accounts around the world, kind of move money around, then there's a payments kind of product suite, so largely kind of accepting payments. And then there's a spend management suite. So again, bill payment, card issuing, etc. Then you have your kind of core API, then you have your embedded finance piece. So within each of the major product suites, so again, for example, payments, there's going to be a dedicated PMM team. Same thing with spend management, same thing with business account, same thing with embedded finance. So that's more of a product approach. But then we're also going to layer on PMMs that are kind of agnostic to product, and that might have, say, a vertical or industry specialization. Because when we're, say, building the website, for example, we need to make sure that it speaks to any type of customer, regardless of what the product they're coming for. So it has to be product, but also platform-esque as well. So vertical and horizontal.
Yeah, again, a lot of the questions I'm asking is because I have those pains myself. And Ahrefs, in 9 years that I've been with the company, it has grown way beyond where we've been when I just started. We're like, at some point, people were calling us a backlink checker.
Yes.
We're not a backlink checker anymore. There's so many other things. And I'm realizing that we have so many different tools. And within those tools, we even have different use cases targeted at different audiences. And right now I'm having a single product marketing team. And I'm starting to feel maybe each of those tools, the bigger ones, they should have their own team to focus just on those tools and promote just those tools. And it seems that this is the right way to go. Instead of just having one general product marketing team, you specialize them and attach them to that might seem stupid probably for some people who are listening, but...
No, but I mean, it's a natural maturation because when we started off, like I said, the company had no product marketing for years, right? We started off being fairly general.
Yeah.
And now we're starting to specialize more.
SEO.
Yes.
A simple question, because we're not going to... This is not an SEO podcast. Ahrefs podcast is not an SEO podcast, but I wonder... What's the size of your SEO budget in terms of the budgets that other teams are getting? Because from my conversations, and once we started hiring salespeople, what we understood is that generally organizations seem to underinvest in SEO compared to even advertising. Advertising can be in tens of millions of dollars in the same company, and the same company would struggle to spend $50,000 per year on their SEO. So I wonder, what is your kind of budget?
It's a bit illogical, right?
Yeah.
But I think it comes down to ease, right? I mean, when you're doing advertising, you can feel like there's quick return and you can, set up and get up and running. Whereas to your point, SEO is this longer term play oftentimes, and it doesn't just require clicking buttons. You actually have to get people to write the content. You have to do the research. So on one hand, it's illogical, but on the other hand, it's not surprising. People kind of rationally go about it that way. Our SEO budget right now is around 7.5% of total budget. That is, I think last year was probably less than 5 or so. I'd like to get it up to double digits, possibly actually 15% or so.
So we can sell you a very fat Ahrefs account.
Yes, probably.
That was a very long pause. You're scaring me.
Yeah, no, I was trying to figure out, should I walk off right now before I get myself in any trouble, or?
Okay, drilling down in more marketing strategies that I see you using. Reports.
Yeah.
You are creating quite a big amount of different industry reports. So I saw Airwallex spend management report, surveyed 500 senior finance leaders, blah, blah, blah. Airwallex Hong Kong first trade report conducted by Airwallex in Q3 2024. The startup financial confidence report, 50 pages long, a huge document. 2024 state of payments in the travel industry report. Skift and Airwallex surveyed 473 travel executives. Anyway, this is just some context of
Yes.
how much effort you're investing into those reports. And I also noticed, because my first question was if you're doing them in-house or if you're using partners, but I answered this question by downloading those reports and seeing that, again, I'm quoting, Airwallex commissioned Newton X to survey 500 senior finance leaders. Then the Startup Financial Conference report, there was a disclaimer. The third party research in this document has not been independently verified by Airwallex. Airwallex commissioned by deployed YouGov.
Yes.
YouGov company to do this report for you. And then I already read that Skift and Airwallex, so you had a partner for the report. One more, Resilience in Retail report. We commissioned Forrester to survey hundreds of retailers. Okay, so I answered my own question. You definitely work with different partners, agencies, and companies to create those reports. But still, I want to know reports as a marketing tool, marketing tactic. Sure. How does it work?
It can work in two ways. It can work if you, and they work depending on kind of what stage you're at for the company. And oftentimes, like, folks have this debate around, do you gate content? Do you kind of keep it open? Because a lot of, for example, enterprise companies with known brands, they'll gate content and have it be lead gen, right? So a way to kind of collect contact details. I am not a big fan of that at the moment, because I still think we're in the phase of kind of building out our kind of contactable database, kind of building out awareness. And so I'd rather put out pieces that get shared broadly in the market and get amplified as a way to kind of build brand, as opposed to short-term lead generation. But I think that's a debate that sometimes folks have about, do you gate content or not? The role that they play for us is kind of twofold. One comes again back to the credibility aspect. And that's why the partners that we pick, they serve two purposes. One, they give us the credibility so that when we especially go and distribute these studies for the media, it's not people thinking this is just a bunch of Airwallex BS. If it's validated by Forrester, if it's validated by Edgar Dunn, whoever in the field, then you know it's actually thorough research that's done, and you can actually publish it in a major newspaper publication, and people will start actually quoting from it in presentations in the industry, right? And so it's a lot of just credibility, but also industry amplification that we get. We also will pick partners, say, for example, Skift, that have a lot of readership in a particular vertical. So if, let's say, we think there's a travel use case, then I can do the partnership with Skift, and they can actually start to distribute that as well to their kind of bigger audience base. And so again, not just credibility, but also distribution efficiency as well. But I care about brand through that, which again is going to be relatively hard to track. You can't track it just in point of time, but I will also track it based on just report downloads and then leads in to our sales team.
I actually had an epiphany when I was trying to analyze and understand why you're doing those reports. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you're not mentioning it as part of how this marketing strategy works makes me doubt that that was an epiphany.
Tell me, what's the...
So, I'm quoting again, Airwallex commissioned Newton X to survey 500 senior finance leaders. Mm-hmm. Then surveyed 473 travel executives. Mm-hmm. We commissioned Forrester to survey hundreds of retailers.
Yes.
These are the leads.
Those are the leads. Although, because these studies aren't necessarily Airwallex focused, because these studies aren't really about selling Airwallex aggressively. So sometimes when folks are filling out kind of surveys or going through the discussions, they have no idea it's an Airwallex commissioned piece of research. They might just be responding in general to the question. So in some cases they might know, but oftentimes they might not.
So this is why I didn't mention, because before I joined Ahrefs, I was running my personal blog.
Yeah.
And I did a very simple study, a survey. I emailed around 500 bloggers. I wanted to ask them how much referral traffic they're getting from their guest articles. And I asked them either to send me a screenshot from their Google Analytics or share their Google Analytics account with me, whichever was easier. And the thing is, by reaching out to 500 bloggers, I got basically a contact database of 500 people who were interested to hear back from me with the results of this research.
Yeah, yeah.
This is why I was looking at your reports, and I was thinking if you engage those agencies or companies like Forrester to get in touch with those people on your behalf to conduct a research study, those people, if they take the time to answer the questions, they're already invested in the outcome. They would love to hear how their answers compare to everyone else. And it's branded by Airwallex. So I thought that I have no idea how many downloads you're getting on those reports. You can detract 3 downloads you got from me of those reports. Those are irrelevant. But I think, I wonder if do those people does the contact information of those people get shared with you by those companies, or do those companies email the report back to those people?
I'm not actually sure. Come to think of it, I don't think they would, because I mean, for more the kind of formal paneling, it's the way it would work is it might actually even be. Is it anonymous? I actually don't know, but I don't think so. Okay. It's for part 2 of the podcast. But I will say that the underlying tactic and principle that you mentioned is quite sound. It's almost like,
it makes sense.
Great tactic of inviting someone to come onto the podcast, asking about the SEO budget, and then doing upsell a fat package.
Something
Jedi mind tricks. Jedi mind tricks.
Something along these lines. Next marketing tactic. You have a page on your website, again, which is very easy to find from your main navigation, case studies. Again, as with many other questions that I'm asking, this is something we're struggling with at Ahrefs. This is something we didn't have for years.
Yes.
And only as we started building out our sales team, they started asking us for case studies. Can you give us case studies to show customers, to help persuade customers? But you have a lot of case studies, and correct me if I'm wrong, but those case study pages, they also seem regional. I actually was too lazy to turn on VPN and try to go to your website from different locations. I only use Singapore. But the case studies that I saw from Singapore seemed very local, or at least like regionally local. So just generally tell me about case studies. How do you use them in marketing? Because again, to give a bit more context, I always struggled with distribution. So if you write an article targeting some keyword that people search for, SEO, people will be finding it in Google, and distribution takes care of itself. If you publish a video on YouTube and you're trying to make this video engaging, YouTube would recommend this video, so it takes care of itself. Case study is not that something that people would search for, and it's not the kind of content that would go viral on YouTube.
Yes.
So you have to distribute it somehow.
Yep.
So I guess my question is mainly along the lines of how those case studies are being distributed or used by your marketing department.
Yeah, of course. And for the record, I'm keen to actually redo our case studies page. So I think, because I don't think it necessarily presents information in the right way. I think it's a build though. I think the past year and a half has been about how do you build out the body of case studies? Because again, like 2 years ago, although we had great customers using Airwallex, we didn't necessarily tell their stories. And so how we architected is that you start with the first principles. What are your target segments? So if you think about a mid-market, enterprise, SME, then you think about what are the target verticals. Then you think about what are the target use cases. And so that's again where product marketing comes in. Product marketing will tell you all this. Then you go and say, well, you almost go through this whiteboarding or spreadsheet exercise where you again lay out vertical, use case, segment, and then you start to plot by market where are the gaps. And so the past 18 months has been filling out that spreadsheet so that we have coverage across all of that. Now we're at the point of, again, distribution and presenting those more efficiently. Case studies kind of serve a few purposes. One is for folks who are already interested in the company and are intrigued, they need social proof. And so it's not going to be the entry point, and it's not necessarily the keyword they're searching for. But once they do land on the page, then they want to see, okay, is this a real company and can they serve me? And is there proof they've done this before? Great. So that's one. The second is in sales conversations. So when sellers are either on the fly, if you're dealing with, say, a smaller customer, you can point them to the website, or if you're doing a formal pitch, we also take deeper versions of the case studies to enterprise clients. And then the kind of third way that case studies typically show up is sometimes in advertising. So we've actually experimented with this in Singapore and Hong Kong fairly successfully, is that we run display ads featuring these customers. Because if someone might not know the Airwallex brand, but they have affinity, to your earlier point, around another brand, then they'll say, they might pay attention to that ad because it's using someone else's brand, and then they say, okay, Airwallex is powering them, or Airwallex is helping them. So that is when we do use it sometimes for some kind of upper funnel acquisition.
I don't think you have this data, but it would be very interesting to know, because all those pages, your case studies, your operational principles, also who we are and our story, all those pages are quite visible in your main navigation. It would be very interesting to see the kind of CTR of each of those pages, like how many people, when landing on the homepage, go to each of those pages, how much interest there is. But yeah, I guess the fact that you put it so prominently in your main navigation menu is actually the distribution tactic, is how people are discovering it. And yeah, that being said, if you put it there, do people really care to go there and check it out?
Yeah, I mean, there's also the counterfactual though, which is if it's not there, that's also sometimes a question, again, of credibility.
Yeah. Next thing, PR.
Yes.
So another section of your website that you have is called Newsroom. And you're essentially publishing company news with a lot of interesting information about your company. Basically something that public companies have to do legally obliged, right? They're legally obliged to disclose a lot of information about like who they're appointing, how much revenues they have, and all those kinds of things. And when I took one of the press releases that you have, namely Airwallex processing volume surges past 100 billion, and they used Ahrefs, of course, to look up
gold standard, right?
to look up who linked to this press release, or who mentioned the words Airwallex and 100 billion in the same article, without necessarily linking to that specific page. I found at least like 6 or 7 websites, something like thisweekinfintech.com, fintechradar.substack.com, pymnts.com.
Payments, big player in the space.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We'll pass it on to our PR team.
ffnews.com, etc. So clearly, those publications are picking up the press releases that you're publishing in the newsroom. But what I want to know, if it's passive distribution or proactive distribution. Do they just visit your newsroom once in a while to see what they want to write about? Or do you have a PR department who is actively engaging those people and saying, we just... Basically, I asked my question.
No, we have a very, very solid PR department. It's not a massive PR department. It's small but mighty. But they do regular engagement with the kind of industry press. But then also starting to think through, as we broaden into different verticals, how do you go beyond, say, just industry press, right? If, let's say we start to, well, not start to, because we already have a number of kind of travel companies, for example. Do you move into kind of travel press, or do you go, how do you kind of diversify that? But no, answer your question directly. We have a great PR team. They're quite proactive with folks. And tying it back to even your earlier question around the event that we did in Singapore, the Shifting Perspectives, that's why we had a lot of folks from the media there. And so it wasn't not only existing folks that we take there, but also we use those opportunities to build new relationships. So
it's an in-house function, not an agency.
In-house function. But we also have, in the same way that we have marketing agencies, our comms team also has agencies they work with in each local market.
Okay. So which means that if we would create a newsroom page tomorrow and just publish some company updates, no one would pick them up without us actively trying to reach out to relevant publications. Okay.
Should give it a shot, right? But I would say though, as your newsroom kind of picks up and as a content becomes more interesting, and I mean, Ahrefs has such kind of interesting data about the world, right? And about industries and about people. That's really what the press responds to.
Yeah.
Press responds to stories.
Yeah.
And freshness. So Yeah.
But this is not what we're going to talk about next. We're going to talk about events.
Let's talk about events.
I've read the AMA you did with APAC marketers with Dave Falaram.
From the days at Stripe, yes.
And I think there was a question about the some highlights from your work at Stripe, and you said, I have a soft spot for the first Stripe sessions we did here in Singapore in 2019. For those of you less familiar with Stripe, Sessions is our flagship annual event, and 2019 was the first time we brought it to APAC. It signals Stripe's commitment and growth in the region. So yeah, it's interesting that you are highlighting an in-person event as one of the things you are most proud of in your years of working at Stripe. And it seems that at Airwallex, you are hosting and partnering on quite a few events. So there was event called Beyond Black Friday. The event hosted in Sydney on 12th of September, brought together 200 of the country's leading e-commerce professionals. Then you did e-commerce champion awards, where Airwallex received more than 400 nominations across 4 categories, judging panel with industry experts. The winners received 25,000 worth of grants. Not bad. Then I think there was Money 2020.
Yep, big industry event.
And some Olympic Spirit competition, an initiative in partnerships with Visa. Anyway, lots of events, all sorts. I wonder, where would you rank hosting and sponsoring events in the chart of your marketing tactics or strategies at Airwallex?
Rank in terms of priority or rank in terms of spend level?
In terms of ROI, in terms of effectiveness, how much of an effective time and resources spent on events?
There is a lot by segment. And so I'll kind of break things down. So there's kind of owned events, partner events, and industry events. So, and each were there for kind of different reasons, right? So let's start with the owned events. So if you take it across segments, one tactic for more kind of mid-market enterprise would be, say, industry dinners that we do, right? These are actually fairly high ROI because it's not that expensive to get a dinner going. I mean, you've thrown some great dinners, right? You bring together folks that oftentimes crave networking and crave best practice sharing from their peers. You're the one who facilitates that, and it's not a hard sell, but you're able to actually build those relationships and kind of, cultivate them over time.
Yeah.
So that tends to be high ROI from an owned standpoint. Then you go all the way from in-person small to kind of virtual large events. Let's say if we did a 500 to 1,000 person webinar, right? I mean, not massive, but I mean, certainly a lot larger than 10 people, right? That is going to be varied a lot, oftentimes based on the speaker you have, based on the kind of topic you have, and to be quite honest, can be hit or miss. So we tend not to anchor too much on those, but how we look at those is less of an event play, more of a content play. Because anything that, and this is a part which sometimes people miss, which is I don't really care about the event during the point in time because that's only a point in time. I care about capturing the event so I can amortize it over a longer period and have it be a content play. So that's how I tend to judge the success of an event. And over time, because there's no cost to just putting it out in the world, over time it will break even. So that's more the in-person. Industry ones can also be all over the place. That requires a lot of trial and error. And then there are going to be some that are there for branding, some that are going to be there for regulators, media, etc. And others are just going to be straight net new client acquisition, client growth as well. So, but again, those tend to be hit or miss, but you have to have the right metrics and you just have to have an honest conversation with your sales teams. Did this event work? We have no ego. If it didn't work, let us know. We won't do it again.
In terms of people who are attending those events, so again, Beyond Black Friday in Sydney, it says brought together 200 of the country's leading e-commerce professionals.
Yes.
Again, we're organizing our own event end of this month in Singapore, and all the tickets, well, the vast majority of tickets were purchased by whoever wanted to attend this event. only a small amount of tickets were given out kind of to target partners, clients, potential clients,
Yes.
future clients. So I wonder if for your events you have any goals and whose responsibility it is. Is it for the sales team to invite the people who you want to connect with and engage to this event? Or is it on the marketing team to
Mix.
There's
kind of a quota in terms of existing kind of prospects, net new prospects, existing customers. So our sales teams, they have essentially an allocation. Then there's probably a media allocation, sometimes a government relations allocation. And then I'd say probably half or so. Again, it really depends on the event. But I mean, let's say on average, half would be marketing's responsibility to kind of generate interest as well.
Do you have a goal to break even with those events in terms of the budget and what you get back in ticket sales or sponsorships? Or it's an expense?
It really depends. But I think that the thing here is that the goal has to be stated at the front. We're not in the business of we do the event and then afterwards, if it doesn't go well in terms of revenue, then we say, oh, it was a brand event. And we're not. At the start of every event, we're very clear. Is this a branding event where we don't necessarily care about short-term return? We're doing this because we need to build a contactable database, get the name out. If so, great. Or is it an event where we have pipeline or sign-up targets, in which case we're going to measure that. But it has to be at the start so people are accountable. Can't retroactively try and justify it.
Now let's flip this. So you hosted your own awards, but you're also getting awards yourself. So Airwallex named top 10 most innovating companies in Australian Financial Review. Recently you posted... I have a printout for it to refresh your memory.
There we go. Yes.
Featured on, again, to show to the camera, to promote YouTube.
Cloud. That was a Cloud 100, I think.
Cloud 100 list, along with OpenAI, Figma, and Canva. Speaking of being in a great company of other brands. Again, I'm processing everything through the prism of my experience, of my 9 years experience with Ahrefs. And we have received a lot of inbound requests to join those kinds of awards and such. And it's 100% pay to play. So to be in the list, you need to pay us, I don't know, 5K, 10K, 20K, depending on the award, and then they would host an event. And I think typically you get some allocation of tickets along with your kind of contribution, and sometimes you need to buy extra tickets if you want to bring more people to the event. So you're extremely pay to play, and it seems that just pay us money and we'll find a category to feature you in.
I'm not a fan of those. In fact, we get, similar to you, we get endless of these inbound requests. 99% of them, we just don't engage. Either we don't reply to. I mean, again, no offense to the folks that are doing this as a part of their jobs, but we're gonna be recognized on the merit of the brand and the merit of the product. And yes, some means even some I'd say more large scale, globally known awards. There might be kind of an admin fee or kind of an entry fee per se, but that if we're there, it's mainly because of the merit, not so much as you said, we're going to pay a fee and then they're going to find a way to kind of put you in.
Another thing that bothered me about those events is that in the SEO space, those events, those award thingies would be happening for many, many years. And when we were invited, we were a new entrant and we don't know anyone there. We don't know the judges. We don't engage with those people. And there are some companies that are getting awards in different categories and enlisting ourselves and losing in the category, for example, the most innovative SEO tool would be bad for us. So we'd rather not participate. And the thing is, I cannot speak of all the events and I don't want to name any names, but I feel there's a level of kind of who has a better network in terms of winning those things, because they are not necessarily objective.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you ever felt that, okay, we're going to be enlisted in this event, but we lose to some other competitor and they would be the best and we are not. How do you think about those things?
Yeah, I mean, we consider that, but I think just in general, we try and the kind of default answer for those types of pay-to-play events is usually no. So we don't even get to the point of saying, are we going to win or lose?
Yeah.
Because we know that in the space there are a handful of really respected awards. Like, for example, and you can tell, like with the pay-to-play events, you can see who's winning it. Usually it's, companies that people have A, never heard of before, B, probably don't even have a great product. And so we also don't want to be in that kind of peer group, right?
I saw some awards company that had like 90 categories or something. So it seems you can like easily win in some kind of category, or they will create a category for you.
And like you have to realize people are not stupid. Like your consumers, the people that we're selling to, are intelligent people. They can spot BS. That's why we'd rather dedicate time into, say, a Cloud 100 list, which is well respected, verified, and the types of, again, folks that are on that list are industry leaders, right? That's the effort, not, random email from random person selling random, 10 seats at the table. Can I just say one thing though, because you brought it up around our awards. This, I think, was something new that we've done this year. And the reason that I think we did e-com awards in Australia and then a campaign around the Olympic step changers in EMEA. That was a very deliberate play for us to have our own awards because it shows, again, credibility and domain authority. In the same way that you have domain authority online, we said to ourselves, in person in the industry, once you actually start being the one who awards accolades to others, that elevates your brand. And so I think that was just something worth calling out.
Jon, thanks a lot. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation.
Likewise. Thank you so much again. And congrats as well on your upcoming conference, which I know people are going to be banging on the doors to get into. So always a pleasure, Tim. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for sticking till the very end of this episode. I guess that means you enjoyed it, right? Because if you did, I have to ask you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, or maybe click the follow button if you're listening to this on Apple or Spotify. Not sure if you know this, but subscriptions and follows are the strongest signal for these platforms to show this piece of content to more people. So I would really appreciate it if you would follow and subscribe. Thanks in advance, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.